Hello, you are listening and watching to the first ever episode of the novel Tea Book Nook with myself. I'm Ken Reed, and this is Kitten Features. Thank you very much for joining us. And we're doing the Stepford Wives today, aren't we, dear?
Yes, husband, we are indeed doing the Stepford Wives.
So that was obviously, this is all part of the inside joke of the Stepford Wives review, right? So she's not like this all the time.
He wishes.
No, I don't. I really don't.
So today we're doing the Stepford Wives by Levin. Some of you may be familiar with him. If you are a horror movie fan, he is also the writer of Rosemary's Baby. However, unlike Rosemary's Baby, Stepford Wives is only, there's only 3 chapters long?
Oh yeah, 3 chapters in total.
3 chapters in total.
It's a very short book. So I read it in its entirety yesterday. So from cover to cover. That's not so impressive when you see the page count. It is very small. And we're going to be discussing a little bit of what our thoughts are, and our opinions, and how it made us think, and what it made us think of. But first, let's give you guys a quick overview of what the book's about.
Now, I have to say, guys, just because it's 3 chapters long, don't let that put you off. Those 3 chapters pack quite a punch. So the story starts off with our main character, Joanna.
Mm-hmm.
She has just moved to a very beautiful Connecticut town.
Called Stepford.
Called Stepford, yes. And when she moves there with her husband and her 2 children, she starts to notice that the other women in town are a bit strange. And now this was written in 1972, excuse me. So this was written right at the kind of the cusp of women's liberation, and it really does address a lot of those points. But I'll leave it up to my husband to finish the plot synopsis here before we move on.
So Joanna is a professional photographer and a very successful one. And her husband is, what does he do? He works in an office. He sells shares or something. I think he's a shares analyst, a stock analyst, something like that.
Does something.
Yeah. He does something that makes money, I think is the point of the story. Because all the people they meet also make a lot of money. They're all very successful people.
Very waspy community.
Very waspy. To the point that I recall in one scene they do point out when a black member becomes a member of the community.
Yeah.
Because it was an unusual thing to them.
Mm-hmm.
So they move to this new community, and yeah, she notices that all the wives in the area are a little odd in that they'll happily invite her in for a cup of coffee, but they'll never actually do anything with her, as in interact in any which way that is meaningful.
Because they're too busy cleaning.
Yes.
You know, the cleanliness is next to godliness. And this novel definitely does touch on the 2 rooms of the house where women are kind of confined to, which is the kitchen and the bedroom.
Yep.
There's pretty much every interaction that Joanna has with any of the women from Stepford, aside from her friends Bobby and I forget, and the one who likes tennis. You read the novel, you'll know which one I'm talking about. Most of all of these conversations with these other women take place in the kitchen, and I think that was a very powerful environment for this message.
And it's fascinating how we perceive different things when we read the same book, because I didn't even notice that until right now. But that's a good point. It does take part only in the kitchen. But the first people she meets are actually not these strange zombie robot slave women. She actually meets a couple of women who are not like that, but they're a rarity. They're very hard to find. But she never keeps these friendships for very long. And that's not by her choice. It's because suddenly she meets them and they are one day no longer the interesting, multifaceted people that they were. And instead they are now, very one-dimensional people who seem to have a set of lines that they can say. And that's all. Their interests only appear to be cleaning and other household duties. And it's a very disturbing scene because suddenly these people who are very, had depth and actually talked about things that are such as hobbies and interests and science and politics and philosophy and sports could suddenly not do that anymore.
That's right. I mean, but the novel. So we'll get back to the plot. The novel mainly consists of Joanna and her family. So as Ken had touched on, Joanna has moved to this area. She is a photographer. Her husband does something outside the house, but she's a very creative individual. And one of her first things. So she obviously. If you've ever lived in a New England, Connecticut kind of place, you know that there's always the welcome wagon. So her first interaction with the welcome wagon woman is to ask if there's any women's groups. She's very interested in women's liberation. She's a active member of the second wave feminist movement, because they do talk about Betty Friedman, who's the author of The Feminine Mystique. And actually, it's quite funny. I don't know if you picked this up, but when she's reading the newspapers and kind of she's delving in trying to find the history of this town and see kind of because there's something weird going on here. There was a women's feminist group that Betty Friedman actually came and spoke to, but then the Men's Association started up immediately after that talk, and all of a sudden the women's group is no longer there.
Yeah.
Now the Men's Association, actually, I'd love to get your thoughts on that and that kind of like this. I have this image of this like lodge, this big mansion with billiard tables and smell of cigar smoke and whiskey. And
I think that's the theme that's portrayed, but the first thing you'd actually see when you look at it is the big metal fence outside to keep the women out, right?
It is strictly no women are allowed. So it's a boys' club.
Yes, and I understand the wish to have a community and work together with people who are similar to yourself. I do understand that, but we should instead try to hang out with people who are similar philosophically and societally rather than by gender. That's not a particularly helpful thing. Now, my thoughts in general with the men's club is a very traditional in the sense of old sort of club that has not really got a place in society anymore, to the point where in the 1970s it was getting called out by the author, saying, this is a bit strange even in the 1970s. And even today there are still sports clubs and communities which are men only, both in the UK, America and elsewhere, I believe, which is a very strange occurrence.
Well, I couldn't agree more, and I think that the novel, through the Men's Association, now obviously with the Men's Association, Joanna's husband Walter, he starts spending a lot more time there, and he's getting really pally with all the husbands of the community. Some of the husbands are notable, such as a magazine editor, I think. Illustrator, and someone who formerly worked at Disney, and specifically helped out with the robotic President's Hall. That's my robot there. President's Hall, which is touched on very lightly in the novel, but without giving too much away, obviously plays a very important part in the novel as well. But I thought with like the Men's Association and the women spending and a lot of the conversations also do take place in a grocery store. So the Men's Association in the grocery store in the kitchen for the women, it felt like it was kind of playing on this idealized 1950s.
Yeah, this sort of manufactured propaganda view of 1950s ideal nuclear family America. And this should, it's actually interesting that you bring up the nuclear family, because I was doing a little bit of research for this novel, and it actually was written as a statement against something called the cult of domesticity. Now, I know I didn't say that right, guys, so if you, in the chat, if you want to tell me how to say that, that would be great. Yes, it's a tough one.
Try saying that 10 times fast. Which was basically also known as the cult of the true woman. Now, this was a kind of school of thought that was brought about in the 1950s, mostly in UK and America, and it was where a woman, actually I do have some notes here, had 4 virtues: piety, purity, domesticity. Thank you, there's that word again. And submissiveness. So, and a woman was supposed to be too weak, physically and mentally fragile than to even leave her house, and that was the symbol of a true woman and true femininity.
I should point out that the husband in this novel initially actually comments that he's a member of a lot of these feminist societies, and he's part of the women's movement, and he likes to go on marches and everything. And the only reason he's joining this men's club is to try and dissolve it from within. And I'm sad to say I somewhat believed him at the beginning because he was saying all the right words, but and I'm unsure whether he's turned by them or whether he'd already decided and found out what Stepford's all about and decided to move there because of that. I don't know.
That's actually a really good point. I didn't even think about that because obviously with so many prominent, well-known male figures coming to this community, I mean, do they really keep it to themselves, or was it something that, was kind of getting spread around and, oh, honey, oh, Stepford, let's go.
Yeah, I don't know. And it's, so one of the most fascinating, we should probably continue on with the plot before I get to that point, actually. Okay, so the main character, Joanna, explores the town and meets more people, and slowly but surely all of her friends seem to be turning into these domestic zombies, which is very odd. And Joanna seems to be having some kind of near mental breakdown to the point where she's actually prescribed some horse tranquilizer, right? She's given something to make her calm down a little bit. And by a female psychiatrist, to be fair, not actually somebody inside the town, but it's because obviously the plot and what's happening around her to all of her friends disappearing and suddenly having dramatic character changes. Yeah. All that happening meant that she was having this understandable breakdown. She was thinking she was losing grip with reality, right? So she got given these tranquilizers and to calm down. And one night she realizes that there's this recurring theme when her friends change, which is that they have a weekend alone with their husband.
Romantic weekend away.
Yeah, where the kids are taken over to friends or whatever, and they disappear for a few days. Even if they're just staying in for a few days. And they come back changed. So she realizes one night after having a bit of one of these realizations of the truth, she tries to run away from home, she tries to escape. And fails. Sadly, the men find and catch her because the police are in on it. Everybody seems to be in on it, and they take her back home. And the husband has taken the kids away because she seems to need to relax for a weekend. So,
but then the novel ends with her friend Bobby, who I actually really enjoyed the character of Bobby. She said some inappropriate things and things like that, but I felt that she was a very, as a woman, female characters are either, before a certain period in time, it was very either idealized or they were completely dragged through the mud. So I think Bobby is a very interesting character. She feels very human. And Joanna feels very human as well, but because Joanna is a protagonist, she does feel a bit more kind of polished than Bobby is. So we kind of see through Joanna's eyes the changes in her friend, and get to know Bobby. And then at the very end of the novel, when Joanna's kind of got caught by all the husbands, to prove to her that nothing untoward is going on, that nobody's a robot. They're like, well, go see. Let's take you to see Bobby. If she cuts herself and she bleeds, you'll see that she's not a robot. Now, spoiler warning, okay, I'm about to talk about the end of the novel, so pause and go read the novel. It's only 3 chapters. You can do it. I believe in you. Come back. So she goes in, and there's really loud rock music playing, and I think it was to cover the screams because the novel ends with Bobby coming towards her with a knife and grinning maniacally, I believe, as well.
Yes. The book doesn't quite end there. There's There's one final mini chapter. It's of 2 or 3 pages, where her new friend that she made, which is the black lady, who she met in the library actually, which is kind of a showing of
children's author. Yeah.
Yes, who's showing of enlightenment of some sort by being in the library, I suppose. Sort of the pre and post, right? And she meets her there, and they're friends and so on throughout the novel. But at the last chapter is the first time we see the perspective from her point of view instead of Joanna's, and she frequently states that she's unsure if it's just because the white people are being unkind to her because of racism, or whether it's due to the fact that Joanna too has turned into a robot. And it kind of implies that the cycle is going to continue, and there will be more and more of these robots.
That's right. The closing scene is Joanna gliding through the supermarket with the rest of the Stepford wives, and with no time to talk to her friend, and all she could think about is cleaning.
Yeah.
I have to say, as a woman reading this novel, Ira Levin has a wonderful ability to capture the suffocating feeling of gender roles sometimes, about being put in this box and very much not allowed your own self-expression. I think that was certainly a theme with this novel, is that, and it also, I think it underpinned a lot of like the undercurrents of marriage and what we expect from each other, and you know, how partnerships should function and how they shouldn't function, and you know, truly being in love with the person that you're married to, warts and all, and not wishing them to be an idealized version of themselves, to just be themselves. And is it really love when it's, you know?
I think the clear difference between this book and reality is that in reality, if you are that rich and you want to just have somebody who cleans your house and cooks your food, you can hire them. You don't need to turn somebody into a robot. But if you actually want a relationship with somebody, you can have that.
I think I'd have to disagree with you there. I think that it does touch on a lot of reality and a lot of gender expectations.
I think a lot of people want that. I think there are a lot of men out there who want that, right? They do want a wife who only fills this gender role and does not step outside it. How dare she have character and personality? How dare she show intelligence and wisdom? How dare she have humor? Any of these things. How dare she bring in a paycheck, right? That's another thing. All the Stepford wives, none of them work. Every single one of them works at home. I
mean, previously, before their Stepfordizing, they were very successful women. Mm-hmm. But it's not just women, it's not just men who want this kind of gender, these defined gender roles. If you guys are ever interested in doing some anger scrolling, there's a website called stepfordwives.org, and it's a group of women who live their lives to the Stepford ideal, completely unironically. And I read Stepford Wives just before I got married, and I was doing a little bit of research, and I stumbled across this website, and it's still up and running, so go check it out, because it's truly something else. And I have to say, there's a certain appeal to it. There is. There's a certain appeal to living your life in a completely, just, you have no control, and it is, you have your functions and your duties, and there's something kind of like soothing about that. It's difficult. It is difficult for anyone, man, woman, dog, child, to really strike on your own and to do the hard bits in life, to find out who you are, to make mistakes. And I think that a lot of people feel that way. They feel lost and confused in this terrifying world, and that these kind of pre-prescribed boxes where you'll be safe, but you know, you're not going to be you. There is a certain appeal to that. What do you think?
That reminds me very much of being a soldier, right? If you're asked to do atrocities or anything, you'll say, well, it was orders, right? You do what you have to do because it's orders. And I think in that sort of preordained society of you must fill this gender role, you get this sort of satisfaction, or at least not necessarily satisfaction, but you know, you have a net underneath you that anything that you're doing that you don't want to do, or anything that you can't do even though you want to, you can just point at the rules and say, well, I can't change it, that's the way it is. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something this book also speaks to, is that cultural norms can be broken from, but it needs more than an individual to do it. Yeah. One single person is not enough. You always need a grassroots movement or something like that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So this raises a lot of philosophical discussion on not just the roles of men and women in society and in a relationship and such, but also what our wants are as a human being and our own individual goals and the likes. I think it's quite interesting that this book sort of portrays these men as wanting solely to function at this men's society. That's all they want in life. They want to just go out drinking every night, and it's this implication that that's like an idealized version of what a man wants as well, which is, I think, kind of fascinating.
Prolonged adolescence is what I would call
that's a good phrase.
Yeah, and I get that, but
it's like the party has to end sometime. I mean, like. Too much of a good thing is not a good thing, right? I mean, I wouldn't want to go out every single night drinking.
At the expense of your family, exactly.
Yeah.
But I think it also asks the question of, what do we really want in a partner? Mm-hmm. What is your expectations for marriage? Because marriage is considered a very almost something that needs to be done, something that you certainly in the past has always been
an expectation,
a societal expectation. So I think there's something to be said about, men who feel like they have to get married. Not excusing them at all. Okay, not excusing these guys at all, but the men who feel like they have to get married and don't quite understand how to have this deep, fulfilling partnership, and instead see women through the lenses of the kitchen or the bedroom.
Well, what's interesting is the main character, Joanna, and her husband, they seem to have a very fulfilling relationship up until he joins the men's society and starts disappearing. Because it implies that she used to be happy in the bedroom, she used to feel fulfilled with him and everything. She says that over and over towards the end of the book. What's happened since we moved here? You no longer seem to want me anymore. I don't feel like you care about me. I don't feel like you want to be with me anymore. And obviously he'd already made the decision by the point to robot her. But they did seem to have something beforehand. So it's curious that there's this implication that it's possible for people to change from a happy relationship into one where you think that there's a better alternative.
That's marriage, though, isn't it? It's something that you have to check on daily.
Yeah.
Any partnership, not just marriage, any relationship. There's so many things that go unsaid, and you really, when you stop seeing your partner as a human being and more as someone who provides a service for you, I think that's what happened with Walter and Joanne.
Yes.
And also the peer pressure of the men's society.
There are expectations that we all grow from our societies. We're not just individuals in a vacuum. You absorb the ideals and the expectations of your society. And I mean, you see it around the world. Be it religious beliefs, be it cultural ones, gender-based ones. For example, different countries have different age of consent for marriage, different expectations on what kind of children they must have, as in male or female, they must do. And these kind of expectations can occur throughout life. That peer pressure can come across at any time. And I think that's a good point to learn from this book, is that we need to be constantly aware that even though you learn from your society, you can also learn that the society is wrong.
I think also the true horror of this novel is not seeing the other gender, women, as full humans.
Yeah.
That's a life half lived, in my opinion. I am a little bit biased. I am a woman, so but I think that's a life half lived. I think that if you're in a relationship with someone and you don't see them as a complete person that you can laugh and talk and argue with and have these, not everything's hunky dory, not everything's leave it to Beaver smiling, then that's a sad existence.
And I think that's one of the things that I find fascinating from this book, and I'm always, every time I find out that there's I learn about the past and the fight for gender equality over the years, egalitarianism. I'm always surprised that we're still facing so many of these issues today. These idea of gender roles, it's not so extreme that every woman is expected to always be in the kitchen constantly and don't have evenings off, like their work at home. I don't think it's that extreme as it is in Stepford Wives, I think, obviously. But it does speak to the fact that there are still gender roles in the society that are expected and pushed upon women. Women are still expected to, have a certain number of children. They are still expected to do certain tasks around the home. For example, if you are, if you want to hammer something on the wall, that's expected to be the man's duty. But, vacuuming is supposed to be the women's duty, even in today's society.
Who unclogged the drain yesterday?
Well, yeah. Both of us.
Exactly. Gender equality.
She did like 9%.
Yeah.
I did like 10%. But I think there are lots of lessons to be learned from this book. And I like the phrase they used earlier, the fact that it's a true horror. Because I would call this, I know it's not technically modern day because it's 70s, but I would say this is a modern day horror.
Contemporary
horror.
Absolutely. Yeah. It fills you with, it's difficult to say how a male might read it, but as a female, it fills you with, like I said, this suffocating feeling and this sense of nihilistic dread. And it's incredibly evocative. It's incredibly effective.
Oh, absolutely.
And
I got up and cleaned the street afterwards. I really did.
Yeah, you did, didn't you?
I did. So let's criticize the book a little bit.
Okay.
What did you find that you didn't like about the book?
It could have been longer. I wanted to know more.
That was my main criticism as well.
I have to say, I like the open ending, but I feel like there could have been a little bit more.
So to be clear, the open ending, what we're describing is that we don't know exactly how the process happens. What changes inside these people to make them like that? Are they actually robots? It's hinted that they are, because the guy worked at Disney's
Hall of
Presidents, right, doing the robots there. But at the same time, it could have been, I don't know, an injection, a lobotomy, or who knows, right? I was curious to see what was actually going on there. And we never did find out.
No, we never did find out. I mean, there are 2 film adaptations that kind of delve into it a bit more. The 1978, you have to fact check me on that, the 1978 film, which I haven't seen, but I have seen a synopsis of, so I will, disclaimer there, I think is a bit more true to the novel. But the Nicole Kidman 2006 film, which I think is vastly underrated. It was ahead of its time. It's got like a 43% on Rotten Tomatoes. I think it's very underdeserved.
A 1970s book adapted in the year 2004 or whatever.
I think it's excellent.
It was ahead of its time.
I think it was. I think it was excellent. I don't think we were quite ready for the humor and the kind of delving a bit more into these 1950s gender roles that were still prevalent in 2008, and I think that it highlighted in that. It made people a little bit uncomfortable.
So you felt like the open ending was a good thing or a bad thing?
Oh, that's a hard question. I think it was a good thing, but I wish that he had delved into the themes and the characters and the development of the world a bit more. But maybe we're asking too much, because it's a sharp, biting, quick little book.
Yeah, I mean, the characters are basically empty shells that talk. Some of the main character, Joanna, is fleshed out more, of course, because she is from her perspective. What do the kids do?
Oh, but the kids are very background. I mean, you've seen
Mad
Men. The kids are background.
They do not. They're mentioned merely as tools to be like, yes, they're still there. That's it, right? Same with most of the characters that are in the book. Like, I'd say there's maybe 15 characters. I'd say 10 of them are very background. They exist just as talking heads.
But I would say that your point. Well, yes.
Not just the women though. I mean the men as well.
There are supposed to be kind of empty shells. And
sure.
The men who have also, I think this is, thank you, because it's kind of giving me a good point here, is the women have lost their humanity in becoming these empty shells, but the men also have lost their humanity by doing this atrocious thing to their wives.
Absolutely.
They are robotic shells as well. Just because they're not cyborgs doesn't mean that they're completely human.
That's a good point. Yeah, my main criticism for the book is it does feel a little, I'm not going to say unfinished, because the plot is perfect. It is fantastic. But the characters feel unfinished and kind of flat to me. But that's because that's not the main purpose of the book. The main purpose of the book is to tell the story. I just do wish it was a little longer, because it was very enjoyable. I can see why there are books made out of it. It's a very interesting. I can see why there's movies made out of the book, because it's really interesting concept to explore these gender roles in society and everything, and our view on it. And have you seen the films? You saw one of them?
I've seen one of them. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've also seen one of them years ago, but I can't recall. So that's our views on this book. I think, unless you have anything else to add?
Go read it. And if you don't like it, then try Rosemary's Baby, because Rosemary's Baby, you get really intimate with the characters in that one, and that one is very too intimate. The neighbors are quite annoying, actually.
How would you rate this book?
Oh, gosh.
Like,
it's a hard one.
You can divide into sections if you'd like to, or just an overall, it's up to you.
I think because of its impact on society and how it so clearly shows the dehumanization of women throughout the ages and even in our modern day, and turns it into what it is. It is a horror. It is a horror novel, just like it's a horror what we're doing to each other. Not us, but other people. I don't know. I 9 out of 10 for me. I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'd have to give it up to that sort of range. I gave it 5 out of 5 on Goodreads. But in reality, like I said, I do have some critique of it in the sense that I don't feel like it was as fleshed out as I would have liked. So I guess 9 out of 10 would be an accurate.
It's kind of hard to find critiques for it. We wanted more.
Yeah.
That is my biggest critique, is we wanted more.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always this balance, right? I think some books go into such detail about scenery and trying to give you depth that you often forget what the purpose of the whole scene was. I think this has the opposite problem, that there's not enough depth. I don't think you can. It's actually described a single room other than the ones that are currently being cleaned. That's which is also important, of course.
I just think the novel itself, it's perfect in the way that it's a metaphor for everything, and the fact that it was short, the fact that the novel itself is short, and Joanna's transformation to a Stepford wife, only 4 months, is short. I think that it just worked. Everything worked for me.
What do you think about the author?
I love him. Oh my god, I love Ira.
I think the purpose of that is a hymn, right? I think that's really fascinating.
A man writing in the 70s as well, and I mean, I've only ever read Rosemary's Baby, so I mean, that alone left me like, wow, how does he get it? Like, he gets it. He just gets it.
Yeah.
And I just think that I would hug him. I think he's an amazing writer, and if you guys are ever thinking about giving him a chance, any of his works, do it, because you will not be disappointed.
Absolutely. So thank you for joining us on the novel Tea Book Nook. This is our first ever episode. We spent all this time making a lovely set and then realised that when we sit at the end of the table, you can't see us. So we had to sit in front of the lovely set. So let's give a moment just to show off. Hey, look at that.
Yay.
We piled all our books. We got a big fake bookcase thing here. Got
what
a
do you mean?
chess
This
set.
is our library.
Our library, of course.
Obviously.
So well done to Kitten for actually assembling such a beautiful set. Which is a very masculine task, actually, but you did a great job. We haven't decided on our book for next week, but we plan to have some community-based kind of stuff in the future.
Oh yeah, guys, throw your suggestions at us.
Yeah.
We would love it.
We are pretty open with what we're reading. We're going to have a limit on time-based stuff. I mean, we're trying to do a week between each show, so
No War and Peace.
No War and Peace.
I already read it. It's really good.
Maybe one day, but not just yet. We're going to try and mix it up, so it's not just going to be gender-based stuff. We're also going to hopefully do some fantasy, some science fiction, some true crime, some mystery, a little bit of everything, including, books by authors of all around the world, right? All genders, all races, all sexualities and such. So we're also going to be having some other community-based stuff in the future. We're going to have this idea that you guys can suggest a book or several books, and we have to read it no matter what, unless the length
spin a wheel as well.
Yeah.
We just want to thank you guys for spending your time here with us. We know that there could be 1,000 other things that you could be doing. The internet is amazing with its vast array of topics and things like that. So thank you so much for choosing to spend some time with us and listen to us witter about books. Really do appreciate it.
Also, thank you to our British people listening in when it's 11:30 over there. We very much appreciate that.
Get yourselves to bed.
Thank you so much for listening, and we'll be back next week, and we'll announce on our Instagram and our Twitter what we're doing next. You can see, I'm not pointing at you, but over here you can see where we'll be announcing it. Those are our Twitter accounts. You can also find us on Instagram, VTW Show X. So this is the novel Tea Book Nook, and we are hosted by Show X. So thank you very much for listening, and we will see you next week.